When you think of history's most brutal conquerors, names like Timur or Genghis Khan probably leap to mind. Their reputations for conquest and bloodshed are infamous. But what about the rulers who were just as devastating, but have somehow faded into the background? We're not just talking about battlefield victories, we're talking about rulers who systematically shattered the societies they conquered. Men whose reigns were marked by cultural destruction, economic ruin, and terror that reshaped civilizations for centuries. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 5 of these men. They're often overshadowed by more notorious names, but their brutality was methodical, their impact was catastrophic, and their stories have been largely forgotten. And be warned, the man at number 1 on our list was so systematically cruel, he makes Genghis Khan look like an amateur. These are the 5 brutal Muslim conquerors that history forgot. Number 5, Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Coming in at number 5 is a sultan who wrapped his cruelty in a cloak of piety. Firoz Shah Tughlaq, who ruled Delhi from 1351 to 1388. After the chaotic reign of his cousin, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Firoz seemed like a breath of fresh air. He invested in public works, building canals, schools, and mosques. He even forgave the crippling loans that had bankrupted the peasantry. But underneath this benevolent surface was a deeply intolerant ruler. Firoz Shah was a man who listened closely to orthodox theologians, and he applied their strict interpretation of Sharia law with terrifying force. His reign saw the persecution of not just Hindus, but also Shia and Sufi Muslims he considered heretics. He made it state policy to demolish newly built Hindu temples. In his own autobiography, The Futuhat-i Firoz Shahi, he proudly writes about his military campaigns and destruction of temples. In one of the most chilling acts of his reign, he had a Brahmin publicly burned alive for the alleged crime of trying to convert a Muslim woman. This wasn't random violence, it was calculated state terror meant to enforce a rigid religious hierarchy. Economically, his policies were a slow burn devastation for non-Muslims. For the first time, he forced Brahmins who had always been exempt to pay the jizya, a poll tax on non-Muslims. This wasn't just about money, it was a public humiliation designed to reinforce their second-class status. He also created a massive department of slaves, the Diwani Bangani, and at his peak, he personally owned over 180,000 enslaved people, many captured during his raids. These captives were forced to work in royal factories, their labor fueling the Sultan's grand projects while their own communities were left broken. Firoz Shah's legacy was cementing a state of subjugation that would define the lives of non-Muslims in the Sultanate for generations. Number 4. Sultan Balban. At number 4, we have a man who climbed from slavery to become one of the most feared rulers of the Delhi Sultanate, Ghiyasuddin Balban. When Balban took the throne in 1266, the kingdom was falling apart. A group of powerful Turkish nobles known as the 40 were the real power behind the throne. Balban, a former member himself, knew they had to be broken, and he chose to do it with a policy he famously called blood and iron. Balban's entire philosophy was based on inspiring terror. He believed the only way to control his kingdom was through absolute, unquestioning fear. He established a court etiquette so strict it was almost bizarre. Nobles were forced to prostrate themselves before him and kiss his feet. Laughter was forbidden in his presence. His face was a permanent mask of grim severity. He wasn't just a king, he was the shadow of God on earth, and he never let anyone forget it. But his true brutality was aimed at anyone who defied him. He unleashed a reign of terror against rebels and defiant villagers. His methods were designed for maximum psychological impact. Rebels were publicly trampled to death by war elephants. After putting down a revolt in the Doab region, he ordered his armies to clear the jungles where the rebels hid, slaughtering the men and enslaving the women and children. These were acts of demographic warfare designed to shatter the social fabric of communities that dared to resist him. His economic policies were just another weapon in his arsenal. He believed that rebellion grew from 2 things: wealth and social connection. So he set out to destroy both. Heavy taxes were designed to keep the population poor and submissive, ensuring they could never afford to rise up. He also established a legendary spy network with informants in every town and even in the homes of his own nobles. no whisper of dissent went unheard. While Balban's iron fist did stabilize the Sultanate and fend off Mongol invasions, it came at a terrible price. He created a pressure cooker of resentment that would explode into chaos the moment he died. Number 3, Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Our third spot goes to one of the most fascinating and destructive rulers in Indian history, Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Reigning from 1325 to 1351, he was a genuine genius, a scholar of philosophy, mathematics, and medicine. The problem was, his brilliant ideas were so completely disconnected from reality that they became instruments of mass death. His most infamous disaster was forcing the entire population of Delhi to move to a new capital, Daulatabad, over 700 miles away. In 1327, he ordered every man, woman and child to abandon their homes and march. The journey was a death sentence. The old and the sick died of exhaustion. The chronicler Ibn Battuta, who was there, said the road was littered with corpses. When some people hid, Tughlaq's soldiers were ordered to hunt them down. One blind man was found and dragged the entire 700 miles. Reportedly, only his leg arrived. And then, after years of this forced exile, Tughlaq changed his mind and ordered everyone to march back to the now empty Delhi. His economic plans were just as catastrophic. He introduced a token currency, making bronze and copper coins equal to silver, but he didn't secure the mint, so counterfeit coins flooded the market. Foreign trade ground to a halt and the economy collapsed. To pay for his failed projects, he jacked up taxes in the fertile Doab region, right as a severe drought hit. When the starving peasants couldn't pay, Tughlaq's armies hunted them like animals. Farmers fled their lands, leading to widespread famine. His 26-year reign was a blur of rebellion, famine, and economic ruin, leaving northern India completely shattered. Before we unveil our top 2, a quick pause. The stories of these rulers have been buried for too long. If you believe this hidden history needs to be brought to light, please support our channel by hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell. It helps us continue to dig up the past and make sure these stories are never forgotten. Number 2, Qutb-ud-Din Aybak. At number 2 is the man who laid the very foundation of the Delhi Sultanate, a 300-year empire built on subjugation. His name was Qutb-ud-Din Aybak. Originally a Turkish slave, he rose through sheer military talent to become the top general for the Ghurid Sultan. When his master was assassinated in 1206, Aybak seized the Indian territories and declared himself the first Sultan of Delhi. His reign was short, lasting only 4 years, but it was a whirlwind of violence that set a brutal precedent for the entire Sultanate. His mission was to cement Islamic rule over a predominantly Hindu land, and he did so with mass enslavement and cultural destruction. Muslim chroniclers of his time, likely exaggerating to glorify their ruler, boasted of his conquests. Hasan Nizami wrote that in one campaign in Gujarat, Aybak enslaved 20,000 people, and in another at Kalinjar, he captured 50,000. While the exact numbers are debated by modern historians, the intent is clear. This wasn't just a byproduct of war, it was state policy. He created a massive slave economy, with men put to the sword or forced into labor and women and children sold in markets across Central Asia. The goal was to deliberately fracture Hindu society. At the same time, he waged a war on culture. Aybak understood that to break a people, you must demolish their symbols. He is credited with destroying dozens of Hindu and Jain temples. Most famously, he razed 27 temples in Delhi and used their desecrated pillars and stones to build the Quwwat-ul-Islam, the Might of Islam, mosque right on top of their foundations. The message couldn't be clearer. A new order was here, built literally upon the ruins of the old. The famous Qutb Minar, a victory tower still standing in Delhi, was started by Aybak to commemorate his master's triumph over the Hindu kings. Aybak's legacy wasn't just a dynasty, it was a system of rule that institutionalized violence and subjugation for centuries to come. Number 1, Alauddin Khilji. And now for our number 1, the most systematically brutal conqueror on our list, Sultan Alauddin Khilji. Reigning from 1296 to 1316, Khilji was a master of terror, a brilliant military strategist, and an economic tyrant. He murdered his own uncle to seize the throne, an act that perfectly defined the ruthless ambition of his reign. While others on this list were brutal on the battlefield, Khilji's cruelty was administrative. His policies were designed to completely grind down and impoverish the Hindu population to prevent any chance of rebellion. The historian Ziauddin Barani, writing about his reign, noted that Khilji's goal was to ensure Hindus could not accumulate wealth, ride horses, or enjoy any luxuries of life. To do this, Khilji launched a series of radical economic reforms. He fixed the price of all essential goods at artificially low levels. This helped his massive army, but it was devastating for farmers who were forced to sell their crops for less than they cost to grow. He then raised the land tax to an unheard of 50% of all produce. This, combined with the jizya tax, created a system of economic strangulation designed to funnel all wealth to the state. The result was widespread poverty and famine. His military campaigns were savage. He's often praised for successfully repelling multiple Mongol invasions, and he did. But his internal campaigns were just as vicious. After conquering the fortress of Chittor, where Rajput women committed mass self-immolation, or Jauhar, Khilji's army is said to have massacred an estimated 30,000 unarmed civilians who remained. But perhaps nothing shows his cold-blooded nature more than his massacre of the new Muslims. These were thousands of Mongol soldiers who had converted to Islam and settled near Delhi. Fearing they might be plotting against him, Khilji ordered a single horrifying slaughter. In one day, between 20,000 and 30,000 of these converts, men, women and children, were rounded up and executed. This sent a chilling message. No one, not even fellow Muslims, was safe from his paranoia. Alauddin Khilji is number one because his brutality wasn't just a tool of war. It was the very architecture of his state, a meticulously designed system of economic, social and psychological terror. From Firoz Shah's pious cruelty to Balban's iron-fisted terror, from the mad experiments of Muhammad bin Tughlaq to the foundational violence of Aibak and the total tyranny of Alauddin Khilji. These reigns represent some of the darkest chapters in medieval Indian history. Their methods were different, but their goal was the same: the complete subjugation of a people. They built empires, but they did so on foundations of broken societies. Their policies inflicted demographic catastrophes through mass violence and enslavement, and created deep, lasting divisions that would echo for centuries. History often prefers to remember the builders and the visionaries, but to ignore these figures is to ignore the reality that millions of people faced. The ruins of their temples and the chronicles of their own historians tell a much more brutal story. So, who did we miss? Are there other brutal conquerors from this era that history has chosen to forget? Let us know their stories in the comments below. Let's keep pulling back the curtain on the parts of our past that have been left in the shadows.